Hey guys, JamesMCD Reviews here. This weekend I went to see It Chapter 2. This is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. This is the sequel to the remake of the Stephen King book, It, that came out a couple years ago. I really enjoyed the first movie. I thought it was really good, really entertaining. In terms of how it compares to the book, I don't know because I haven't read it, but just as a movie, just as a standalone movie, I thought it was really entertaining. It built up suspense really well. The cast was great. It was funny while also creepy at points. It had a lot of, heartwarming elements. It was just all around a really enjoyable movie. And the sequel is coming out, and this was one of my most highly anticipated movies of the year because I was really excited after the really high bar that the first movie set. I was really excited to see how the story continued, or I guess ended rather. The cast was really promising. Returning to this world and this story was really exciting. But I was also like a little bit nervous because the infamous thing about Stephen King is he's terrible at writing endings, and with It is no exception. Like, people were saying, even with the original miniseries, that the stuff with the adults was like the worst part. So that was kind of getting me nervous. As the reviews started coming out, I was holding out judgment until I saw the movie, but I was hearing mixed things all around. And to quote what I said to my girlfriend after, because we saw it on the same day, but to quote what I said to her, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Like, the movie is not as good as I thought it was going to be, but it's not terrible either. There are some things that are genuinely amazing. There are some things that are pretty bad and pretty boring. There are some things that are so incredibly batshit and ridiculous that you can't help but laugh at them. But as a sequel, as a follow-up to such a good movie, and as the end of this whole story, I can't really say that I was too impressed by this movie. Before I go into bashing it, I should probably mention the good stuff. So the good stuff is, the best part is easily the cast. The cast is kind of what saved this movie. I think all of them have really good chemistry. They're all written relatively well. Their delivery, their performances are pretty great. They all have great comedic timing. Anything out of Bill Hader's mouth is absolute gold. I think they all look the part. The guy playing Eddie especially, I'm almost convinced that they traveled into the future and got the exact same actor that did the first movie, the child actor, and they got him from the future and just cast him in the same role because he looks and acts identical to the child actor. Bill Skarsgård returning as Pennywise. He's kind of less intimidating this time. And to be fair, he wasn't really that intimidating in the first one, but he still had kind of some underlying, edge to him, to where, when they kept building him up, or when they kept, having little, scares and stuff, you were still, kind of genuinely creeped out. But, here, he's kind of, downplayed, or he's a little bit less impressive, but, Bill Skarsgård is still putting his all into this performance. The movie is really funny. Whether intentionally or not, it's really enjoyable. There's some pretty cool camera work. It's definitely visually interesting, and it keeps with the same sort of visual tone and style as the first one. And much like the first one, there are definitely quite a few heartwarming scenes. When a certain character dies, you definitely feel the impact of that. And when the scene kind of intensifies, you are kind of sat there on the edge of your seat holy shit, what's gonna happen next? But I mean, aside from those things, the movie does kind of fall flat in a bunch of other areas. For one, it's way too long. Like, a lot of people have already mentioned this, and they're all right. This movie is nearly 3 hours, and it did not need to be. Like, you could have cut, I don't know, like 35 to 40 minutes out of this movie and missed nothing. Like, the bit with the bully coming back, Bowers, which, by the way, how the hell did he not die when he fell down that well? Like, are they just gonna ignore that? But anyway, yeah, like, the stuff with him, he comes back after falling down a well, gets arrested for killing his dad, and then he's in a mental asylum. Pennywise breaks him out, he goes around trying to kill the kids, and then he dies. Like, that whole story and that whole character you could have cut out and missed nothing. You know, this is coming from the guy that's seen Endgame like 6 or 7 times. Like, I can sit through a 3-hour movie if, it's, the pacing is good and it keeps you invested. And the sad fact is, this movie does neither of those. The pacing is really inconsistent, and there are a lot of scenes that just drag on, and there are a lot of scenes where you can just feel every second going by, and you're like, can something please happen? The movie isn't really all that scary. Like, granted, the first one wasn't either, but there were still a lot of, like, creepy moments, and there were some good, like, setups for scares. Not a lot of great payoffs, but still some really good setups. And this one, like, they play up kind of like the haunted house element that the first one had, but it kind of just gets old after a while. Honestly enough, some of the scariest stuff, like, in the movie had nothing to do with, like, the monsters or Pennywise or any of the jump scares. The jump scares are kind of obnoxious, by the way. But, like, some of the scariest stuff had nothing to do with that. It was, like, some of the more, like at the beginning of the movie, these guys, like, brutally beating a gay couple and throwing one of them over the bridge. That was, like, really messed up, and, like, Beverly's abusive relationship. Honestly, those two things alone were more scary than anything else in the entire movie, which I kind of felt like, now that they're adults, you could have, like, raised the stakes a little bit more and made it a lot more terrifying. The effects are pretty bad in this one as well. A lot of them weren't that much better in the first one, but they did try. They did at least try. Like, there were some really great effects shots in the first movie, but here, like, it's so, and I mean, there are a couple, like, some of the, like, zombie makeup or, like, blood effects are kind of cool, but, like, other than that, the CGI is really noticeable and really distracting and really cartoony. And, like I said before, it's not scary. Like, you're supposed to be invested and convinced that all these creepy things are really there, but they never look like that. One thing I found kind of funny is that there's a whole Bill, who's played by James McAvoy in this, there's a whole running joke about how Bill is terrible at writing endings, but the irony in that whole thing is that the ending in this movie is quite possibly the worst part. Like, the whole, like, battle with Pennywise goes on for way too long. The spider version of him looks, like I said, it looks terrible. It looks, like, super ridiculous, and it looks like a fucking cartoon. The way that they defeat it is kind of, like, stupid. It's honestly, like, just as bad as, like, the power of friendship will defeat all of you. Like, it's one of those kinds of things. And then after that, when they, like, escape the house and they're, like, kind of, like, doing, like, the Lord of the Rings thing where they're, like, ending off all the different characters' arcs and being, like, you have, like, Stanley's monologue or whatever. That kind of stuff was alright, but at the same time I was kind of, like, cringing a little bit, like, oh god, can we just move this along? Like, I feel like, and again, who knows, maybe that was the way it was in the book, I don't know, I haven't read it, but I feel like you could have done, something a little bit better than what we got. So yeah, ultimately I was a little disappointed by this movie. I don't regret watching it or anything, and I would still recommend, seeing it at least once, because if not for nothing, it is at least entertaining. Even, like, the lesser parts are still, you know, funny in how ridiculous they are. But I feel like as, you know, once again, as an ending to this, you know, story and these characters and, you know, I especially following up a movie that was so good, like It Chapter 1, I felt like you could have done a better job. And, you know, in terms of like, would I ever watch this movie again, I feel like if I was doing like a marathon of like both movies back to back, I feel like I would, but I would never go watch this movie on its own. Like, It Chapter 1 I could watch on its own over and over again, but like, I could never go back and watch It Chapter 2 just by itself. I would have to be watching both movies. Anyway, those are my thoughts. If I had to rate it, I'd probably give it, you know, I'll say straight down the middle, give it a 3 out of 5. Like, it's not the worst thing ever, it's not the best thing ever, it was at least entertaining. Yeah, so that about does it. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of It Chapter 2, which movie do you prefer, and if you could adapt any of Stephen King's books into a movie, which would you pick? Or if it already exists as a movie, which one do you think deserves a reboot? Let me know down in the comments. More reviews coming soon. I want to try and get like a lavalier mic to like attach to myself, so that I can do more reviews like outside and show like more of the city and stuff like that. I feel like that would be cool. But yeah, so look forward to those coming soon. Apart from that, be sure to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell so you can stay up to date on what I'm posting. Follow me on all my social media, subscribe to my main channel. Everything you need to know will be in the description. Thank you guys for watching.